Ron Howard was only 6 when the world fell in love with him as little Opie Taylor on The Andy Griffith Show. But decades later, at 70, the man who became one of Hollywood's most respected directors has finally revealed a truth about that time that no one expected. And it's not the heartwarming story fans wanted to hear. Behind the laughter of Mayberry and the gentle wisdom of Sheriff Andy Taylor, something deeper was happening. Something that shaped a boy for life. For years, Ron stayed silent, out of respect for a man he called his mentor. But now, as he looks back on his childhood in television's golden glow, he's ready to share what really went on behind the camera. And what he reveals about Andy Griffith, the man everyone thought they knew, is shocking, tender, and painfully human. Because sometimes, even the most perfect father figure hides the hardest truth. Long before the Oscars, before the director's chair and the Hollywood acclaim, there was a freckle-faced boy standing under the hot lights of a North Carolina set. Ron Howard wasn't born into fame. He was raised in it. His parents, Rance and Jean Howard, were both actors who believed in discipline and respect for the craft. When Ron landed the role of Opie Taylor in 1960, it was meant to be a small opportunity, a chance for their son to learn humility through performance. No one expected that The Andy Griffith Show would become one of the most beloved programs in television history, or that its youngest cast member would quietly carry the weight of its perfection for decades. For 8 seasons, America watched Ron grow up on screen. He learned his lines before he learned his times tables. He spent his days surrounded by adults who were shaping a new kind of television, gentle, moral, and slow-paced, in an age chasing slapstick and glamour. But the simplicity that made Mayberry magical came at a cost. Every smile had to be rehearsed, every line delivered with the precision of truth. Andy Griffith, the show's heart and backbone, demanded it. He wasn't cruel, just demanding. For Griffith, authenticity mattered more than applause. Ron Howard's portrayal of Opie Taylor began in 1960 and continued until the show ended in 1968. His father, Rance Howard, frequently visited the set and once offered Griffith a suggestion that changed television history: to write Opie as a respectful, thoughtful boy, instead of the wisecracking sitcom child audiences were used to. That note became the emotional blueprint for the father-son bond millions cherished. At first, young Ron didn't understand the gravity of it all. He simply wanted to make his TV dad proud. But behind those tender scenes, he often felt the silent pressure of Griffith's perfectionism. The actor carried the weight of the show on his shoulders and expected everyone else to meet his standard, even the 6-year-old standing beside him. Griffith, though adored by fans, struggled privately with insecurity about the show's critical reception. He once told colleagues that the critics don't take us seriously, frustrated that the show's emotional depth was dismissed as simple nostalgia. That tension often filtered onto the set, where young Ron learned quickly that even a quiet pause or missed cue could shift Griffith's mood. Still, there was affection. Griffith often reminded Ron that their connection had to feel real, not acted. "Don't play my son," he told him once. "Just be him." It was the kind of mentorship that could both nurture and confuse a child. How could someone be a son to 2 fathers at once? One by camera, one by blood. As years passed, Ron became the bridge between his 2 worlds, the obedient child and the professional actor. By the age of 10, he had already worked alongside stars like Don Knotts and Francis Bevier, mastering comedic timing that many adults took years to perfect. Howard's work ethic earned him respect on set, and even Griffith would later admit that the kid understood acting better than most men twice his age. But inside, Ron began to feel the first tremors of doubt, about identity, about control, about where Andy Griffith ended and Opie Taylor began. Everyone adored Opie, but few ever asked how Ron felt about carrying that image into adolescence. When the show ended in 1968, Ron Howard was just 14. Overnight, He went from America's favorite son to a teenager struggling to find his own reflection beyond Mayberry's white picket fences. Those early years were the foundation of everything that followed: the discipline, the restraint, the perfectionism. But they were also the years of silence, of things felt but never said, of lessons learned too early, of a bond between two men that would one day reveal its deepest, most complicated truth. Because even in a town built on laughter, there are secrets that never fade. They simply wait for time to bring them back into the light. When Ron Howard speaks of his childhood today, his voice carries both gratitude and a trace of something unspoken, a quiet reckoning with the world that built him. Decades have passed since the final whistle blew in Mayberry, yet the lessons from that small town set still echo through his life. Now, at 70, he admits that what millions saw as innocent comedy was, behind the camera, a masterclass in pressure, control, and unrelenting expectation. He remembers Andy Griffith, not as the flawless father figure television worshipped, but as a man of fierce precision. Andy wanted honesty above everything. Ron once shared, he didn't like fakery. If you couldn't find the truth, he'd stop the scene until you did. For a child barely out of kindergarten, that kind of intensity could be both thrilling and terrifying. In interviews from his memoir and podcasts, Howard described Griffith as his greatest teacher, but also the first adult who made him question what it meant to perform truthfully. That duality, mentor and taskmaster, defined their bond. On set, Griffith kept the atmosphere disciplined. Crew members respected him, but they also tiptoed around his moods. When scripts didn't land or laughter felt forced, he would quietly leave the stage, head bowed, and rework entire scenes late into the night. Don Knotts once revealed that Griffith rewrote dialogue to sound real, ensuring that every exchange between Andy and Opie felt like a genuine conversation between father and son. For Ron, that authenticity demanded emotional maturity far beyond his years. He learned to read tone, to sense when Griffith's patience was thinning, to deliver sincerity even when he didn't fully understand the words. Howard later said those lessons shaped his directing philosophy, insisting that truth should always outweigh theatrics. It's why A Beautiful Mind, Apollo 13, and Cinderella Man pulse with empathy rather than spectacle. But there was another side to that truth. Howard revealed that as the show grew popular, Griffith's perfectionism deepened. The man adored by millions felt a quiet resentment that critics dismissed the Andy Griffith Show as sweet but shallow. He wanted respect, not just ratings. Griffith privately confided to close friends that comedy was his mask, and dramatic honesty was his goal. A fact Howard only fully understood years later. In the midst of those emotions, Ron carried a burden he didn't share with anyone, the fear of disappointing the man he admired most. Each take felt like a test. When Andy was pleased, he once said, "You felt like you'd earned something sacred." When he wasn't, the silence could pierce deeper than any scolding. As the seasons rolled on, that emotional rhythm became part of Ron's DNA. He learned to stay composed, to watch, to listen. By his early teens, he was already directing short films behind the scenes, studying how moments were built, a skill directly inherited from Griffith's obsession with pacing and timing. Years later, when Ron finally looked back not as a son or student, but as an equal, he realized the tension on that set had been love in disguise, a mentor demanding excellence because he saw potential no one else did. The truth he reveals now isn't scandal for its own sake, it's confession. Andy was complicated, he said softly, in a recent interview. He wanted perfection, but he also wanted connection. Sometimes the two didn't fit. Griffith's perfectionism later cost him friendships and even health. He admitted to close friends he was too hard on himself and others. Ron's candor brings that humanity forward, not to judge, but to understand. In that admission lies the revelation fans never expected. The Mayberry we loved was built by men chasing honesty, not simplicity. Behind the laughter was craft, Behind the craft, pressure. Behind the pressure, affection that neither man knew how to fully express. At 70, Ron Howard finally gives words to the silence of his childhood, not to diminish Andy Griffith's legend, but to complete it. Because what he uncovered wasn't scandal at all, but the quiet humanity behind the legend. Ron Howard grew up under studio lights that never dimmed. While most children were learning to ride bicycles or play ball, he was learning to hit emotional cues and stand on precise marks. By the time the Andy Griffith Show ended, Ron was no longer just a child actor. He was a professional in every sense. The cost of that discipline was only something he would fully understand years later. He has described the experience as one where he did not have a normal childhood, but he learned how to tell stories that mean something. After the Andy Griffith Show ended in 1968, Ron transitioned seamlessly into his role as Richie Cunningham on Happy Days, which ran from 1974 to 1980. It was another cultural landmark that defined an era, and yet even amid the laughter and fame, he carried with him the quiet intensity he had learned from his early years. Sincerity mattered more than spectacle, and that philosophy guided every performance he gave and every decision he made behind the camera. By the time he directed his first feature film, Grand Theft Auto, in 1977, Ron was already drawing on lessons from his childhood. Those early experiences had instilled in him an understanding of human emotion and authenticity that could not be taught in film school. His subsequent films, including Splash in 1984 and Cocoon in 1985, demonstrated a director who anchored his stories in empathy and honesty, a direct reflection of the discipline he had learned on the set of Mayberry. In his memoir, The Boys, published in 2021, Ron described years of inner conflict, expressing both gratitude for the foundation Andy Griffith provided and the weight of early fame. He acknowledged that being immersed in the adult world of television as a young child taught him lessons about human connection that he could only comprehend fully as an adult. He understood that the emotional honesty Griffith demanded was more than acting, it was training for life itself. Following Andy Griffith's passing in 2012, Ron reflected publicly on their complicated relationship. He credited Griffith with teaching him everything about storytelling and integrity, lessons that he carried silently for decades. By his 20s, Ron was already applying those principles as he explored directing in television and film. His work ethic and emotional depth allowed him to transition successfully from child actor to one of Hollywood's most respected filmmakers. Ron Howard earned Academy Awards for A Beautiful Mind in 2001 and received nominations for Apollo 13 in 1995. Each of these films reflects the authenticity he first witnessed in Mayberry. Even as a director, he emphasizes moral complexity and human connection, traits rooted in his early experiences with discipline, mentorship, and observation. He also credits his family, especially his father Rance Howard, for grounding him in humility and perspective. The advice that fame fades but character endures became a guiding principle in both his professional and personal life. In modern interviews, Ron still describes Andy Griffith as a figure of fairness and demanding standards. The lessons learned in childhood shaped him, but reflection allowed him to see those lessons as acts of care. He no longer perceives the intensity of his youth as a burden, but as preparation for a lifetime of storytelling, leadership, and empathy. At 70, Ron Howard now views his journey with clarity. The boy who once feared disappointing his mentor has become a man whose work celebrates human connection and emotional truth. The lessons from Mayberry continue to resonate in every film he creates, every story he tells, and every actor he guides. The legacy is not merely fame, it is conscience. And it is the quiet understanding that the human experience, with all its pressures and complexities, can be transformed into art that endures. Ron Howard stands today as a testament to a life shaped by discipline, talent, and reflection. A man who took the lessons of childhood and transformed them into a career of remarkable depth. The boy who once learned humility on the set of The Andy Griffith Show became a filmmaker whose stories illuminate human resilience, connection, and morality. Each film he directs carries traces of the discipline he absorbed, the emotional awareness he developed, and the respect for truth he witnessed in his earliest mentor. Even as fame escalated with roles on Happy Days from 1974 to 1980, and as he transitioned behind the camera in 1977 with Grand Theft Auto, Ron never lost sight of the principles that guided him as a child: empathy, observation, and the pursuit of emotional authenticity became his compass. His work on films such as Splash in 1984, Cocoon in 1985, Apollo 13 in 1995, and A Beautiful Mind in 2001, demonstrates a consistent devotion to character-driven storytelling that connects audiences to the essence of human experience. Ron Howard directed Cocoon in 1985 and has consistently emphasized character over spectacle. He credits his early experiences on The Andy Griffith Show with teaching him the value of preparation, patience, and emotional truth. In 1995, Apollo 13 earned critical acclaim for balancing technical achievement with profound human emotion, reflecting the lessons he learned about observing subtle cues as a child actor. Through decades of work, Ron has cultivated a sense of redemption, not in the sense of overcoming hardship but in honoring the foundations of his youth. He acknowledges the intensity of his early environment, recognizing that the pressure he faced shaped a sense of resilience, precision, and compassion that would define him as an artist. He has described his upbringing as one where discipline and attention to detail were paramount, and these qualities have guided every project he has undertaken. After Andy Griffith passed away in 2012, Ron spoke about the profound influence his mentor had on his understanding of authenticity in storytelling, not as a subject of scandal but as a source of human insight. Ron Howard continues to direct through Imagine Entertainment, producing award-winning films and documentaries that reflect the emotional honesty and narrative clarity instilled in him during his childhood. At 70, Ron reflects on his life with quiet satisfaction, acknowledging that the lessons learned on a small television set shaped a career that spans decades, genres, and forms. He recognizes that mentorship, discipline, and empathy are gifts, and that true guidance can exist without constant praise, without public acknowledgement, and without the validation of a crowd. It is this understanding that has allowed him to navigate Hollywood with integrity and longevity, preserving the human values he learned as a child while creating stories that resonate universally. Ron's journey was never only about fame or success, but about emotional truth, connection, and understanding. The boy who feared failure has become a man whose work inspires, whose storytelling educates, and whose reflection honors the complexity of human experience. Every glance at a scene, every rehearsal, and every finished film carries the imprint of those early lessons. Ron Howard's story reminds us that guidance, mentorship, and care can shape lives in ways that endure beyond recognition, applause, and accolades. It is a testament to the quiet power of learning, observing, and carrying forward the truths instilled in childhood, transforming them into art that touches hearts across generations. Today, Ron Howard stands as a living testament to the lessons of his youth, a man who transformed childhood discipline into a lifetime of storytelling, empathy, and artistry. The boy who once navigated the pressures of a television set has become a filmmaker whose work reflects emotional truth, resilience, and humanity. His journey reminds us that the greatest legacy is not fame or recognition, but the values we carry, the stories we tell, and the integrity with which we live. Through every scene, every film, and every reflection, Ron Howard proves that the lessons of childhood can shape a life that resonates far beyond the camera. For more emotional stories, check out this video.